December 30, 2025, SEBI has just released another certification bombshell, this time impacting every compliance officer of every AIF registered in India. SEBI has mandated that every compliance officer registered with every AIF in India now needs to pass an NISM exam by January of 2027. 2025 has really been the year that SEBI has taken the entire AIF industry back to the classroom. First with NISM 19C, then 19D, 19E, and now we have a new NISM Series-III-C. Let me show you what's happening. Hi everyone, I'm Parth from Navigate AIF, and we are a legal tech company on a mission to transform complex SEBI regulations into actionable insights. On 30th of December 2025, literally what was the last working day for many folks across the world, SEBI has issued a new circular mandating that all compliance officers of AIF managers in India must obtain an NISM Series-III-C certification. This is the fourth major certification requirement that SEBI has rolled out in the past 2 years for the AIF industry in India. And I'm going to argue that 2025 is going to be the year that will be remembered as SEBI professionalizing the entire AIF industry through these mandatory certifications. I'll break down the new requirements, show you what the NISM Series-III-C curriculum actually holds, explain the timeline, and then zoom out and show you the bigger picture of what SEBI is doing. Let's dive right in. First, let us go through the circular released by SEBI to understand the nuances in the circular. So, circular was released on 30th of December 2025, and the title is Certification Requirement for Compliance Officers of Managers of AIF. So, this circular is only for alternative investment funds. It starts by saying that in terms of Regulation 20, Sub-Regulation 17 of the AIF regulations, the manager shall appoint a compliance officer who shall be responsible for monitoring compliance with the provisions of the Act, rules and regulations, notifications, circulars, guidelines, instructions, and any other directives issued by the board. So this is correct. It's mandatory for every alternative investment fund, AIF, to appoint a compliance officer in India. Further, in terms of Regulation 20, Sub-Regulation 18 of the AIF regulations, the compliance officer shall satisfy the eligibility criteria as may be specified by the board from time to time. So the regulations already had a provision built in that there may come a point when SEBI may specify certain eligibility criteria for being a compliance officer of an AIF in India. Let us understand what the current position is. Before the circular was introduced, what was the position for compliance officers? Was there any criteria? So to understand that, you need to know what the master circular says. The relevant clause here is obligation, is chapter 13 of the master circular, which talks about obligations of manager, sponsor and trustee of the AIF. Here you can see clause 13.1.1 says that AIF shall ensure that manager of an AIF designates an employee or director as compliance officer. So only an employee or director, of course partner in case the AIF manager is structured as an LLP, only they can act as compliance officer, who shall be a person other than the chief executive officer of the manager. So it can't be that only one person is running the entire show. One person can act as the chief executive officer of the manager, another person can act as the compliance officer, or such equivalent role or position depending on the legal structure of the manager. So the compliance officer can't be the CEO or an equivalent role. Then it says that the compliance officer shall be responsible for monitoring compliance with the provisions of the SEBI Act, AIF regulations and circulars issued thereunder. So that's the role of the compliance officer. What other obligations are applicable on compliance officers? For that we need to look at the AIF regulations. So the circular already referenced regulation 17 and 18. It's also important to look at regulation 19, which is that the compliance officer shall immediately and independently report to the board, that is SEBI, any non-compliance observed by him as soon as possible, but not later than 7 working days from the date of observing such non-compliance. So the compliance officer's role inside of the AIF is actually that of a whistleblower, and the compliance officer is required to intimate SEBI the moment they see a non-compliance, and there is a personal obligation on them to make sure that they report this within 7 working days. That's a timeline you should remember. Let's move on to see what else does the circular say. The circular says that in this regard the following is specified. The compliance officer of manager of an AIF shall obtain certification from the National Institute of Securities Market, that is NISM, by passing the NISM Series-III-C Securities Intermediaries Compliance Fund Certification Exam. So there is actually one more exam called the NISM Series-III-A, which is Securities Intermediaries Compliance Non-Fund Certification Exam, and this is the fund one. As mentioned in the communique number, NISM certification this dated November 20, 2025, issued by the NISM. Managers of AIF shall ensure that with effect from 1st January 2027, only those persons who have obtained the aforesaid certification shall be appointed or shall continue to act as compliance officer of managers of AIF. So new people who are being appointed have to clear this, and even the existing people have to make sure that in this next 1 year they clear the NISM Series-III-C. Further, it says that the trustee, sponsor or manager of the AIF, as the case may be, shall ensure that the compliance test report prepared by the manager in terms of para 15.2 of the master circular includes compliance with the provisions of this circular. So we have to also mention this in the CTR. So if you are preparing for the NISM Series-III-C, you also get a good idea of what this holds. So we look at the chapters first. So it talks about the introduction to the financial system, giving overview of the financial system, intermediaries, financial securities, a general view of the regulatory framework, talking about the regulatory system in India, appellate authority, legislative framework, an introduction to compliance, explaining compliance requirements under the SEBI regulations, then giving overview of SEBI, salient features of the SEBI Act, then we have SCRA and securities contract regulation rules, SEBI intermediaries regulations, which is applicable on all SEBI intermediaries. This includes everything like general obligations, inspection and disciplinary proceedings, code of conduct, online resolution of dispute, etc. Then we have SEBI prohibition of insider trading regulations, PIT regulations, giving overview of that. Then we have PFUTP, that is SEBI prohibition of fraudulent and unfair trade practices relating to securities market regulations 2003. It includes PFUTP, etc. Then PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, highlights of PMLA, highlights of SEBI Master Circular on guidelines on AML and CFT, SEBI KYC Registration Agency regulations, there are the KRA regulations. So what is registration as a KRA, obligation on surrendering certificate of registration, code of conduct for KRA, SEBI FPI regulations, so that this is SEBI Foreign Portfolio Investors regulations 2019. We have the FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, with this everything, relation between FEMA and securities market in India, foreign direct investment in India, foreign investments in portfolio investment scheme. Then the Depositories Act, introduction, rights and obligations of depositories. Then fund-based intermediary specific regulation. So then it talks about what is the structure of the mutual fund, key concepts of mutual funds, schemes of mutual funds, all the details relating to mutual funds. Then finally, in chapter 15, we come to AIFs, which talks about SEBI alternative investment fund regulations, important terminologies, classification of AIFs, investment strategy, specific type of funds. We also have InvITs here, that is introduction to infrastructure investment trusts, InvITs, REITs. So we have then REITs, actually SEBI REIT is real estate investment trust, that is also a type of investment fund. An introduction to that, structure, key definitions, fundraising by REITs, listing conditions, borrowing, valuation, all the details relating to REITs, and the chapters start. Let us also see the weightages actually for each of these chapters in the exam. So here it is on page 7. As you can see, all of these chapters have different weightages, with the most number for mutual fund regulations and AIF regulations, and it's totally a 100-mark paper with negative marking of -1. So that is also provided here. The examination consists of 100 questions of 1 mark each and should be completed in 2 hours. The passing score of the exam is 60%. There shall be a negative marking of 25% of the marks assigned to a question. So it's with negative marking, and we have 1 year to prepare for this exam. To understand the requirement behind SEBI introducing a mandatory certification requirement for compliance officers of AIFs, it is critical to understand the journey behind how SEBI has been introducing mandatory certification requirements on the AIF industry as a whole. So it all started back on 13th of May 2024, when SEBI has actually introduced the NISM Series-XIX-C for at least one key investment team member in AIFs. So the rule initially was that at least one key investment team member in all AIFs had to clear the NISM Series 19C, and the rule was that existing AIFs could clear this and obtain the certification till 9th of May 2025. However, new AIFs that were applying for registration had to have one member on the key investment team with this certification already with them. So that was the rule initially. This came on 13th May 2024. Then on 13th May 2025, actually SEBI extended the original deadline to obtain NISM 19C certification till 31st of July 2025. Deadline was extended. Now in the middle, before the deadline was reached, on 25th of June 2025, there was a gazette notification with the release of two new NISM certification exams for AIFs. This was the NISM Series 19D for category 1 and 2 AIFs and NISM Series 19E for category 3 AIFs. And the rule then became that managers of category 1 or 2 AIFs could either obtain the NISM Series 19C or the NISM Series 19D. Similarly, managers of category 3 AIFs could either obtain NISM Series 19E or 19C. And 19C was used for both category, like for all the kind of funds, category 1, 2 and 3, all of them. Now on 20th of November 2025, we have the introduction of NISM Series III-C certification exam by NISM. So this was the day that NISM itself launched the NISM Series III-C exam, and now on 30th of December 2025, we have the release of the certification requirement for compliance officers of AIFs. So what you can see is that SEBI has been doing this for the past 2 years, and there has been a drive to ensure that the AIF industry itself becomes more professionalized. The idea is that AIF is a very sophisticated product for high net worth investors and institutional investors. Even the capital requirement is high. We've also seen SEBI saying that it wants to limit the product to accredited investors only and wants to limit it to those sophisticated investors eventually in the future. That has already come in for angel funds and co-investment schemes, but eventually we may see this happen for all AIFs as well. Similarly, SEBI wants that managers should also become sophisticated just as the investors are sophisticated, and they want to run this drive of sophistication through certification exams to make sure that the folks who are running the show and are running the fund managers and those enterprises are all qualified, and SEBI can attest to it. It remains to be seen how the industry takes it, but I do think it's time for everybody to get back to the classroom. Thank you.